excited to be here and talk about sound. As you can see, I'm a sound person and not a visual person. My slides are very plain. That's not true. Most of them are photos. So I should be clear that this is the creator track, but I'm not a creator. I'm an investor, and I'm a user, and I'm a sound lover. But just setting that expectation, I won't be telling you, giving you advice on how to create and implement sound or spatial audio, but why it's important. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll see the usefulness, and you'll see how it's actually going to help to get us from mobile augmented reality and the basic augmented reality we have today to a fuller, more robust augmented reality. Can I get a sense from the folks in the audience how many of you have actually created something in AR? Oh, that's great. And of those, how many of you guys have thought about sound? Like it's not always applicable, but okay, so I would say it's about, just so you guys know, half of the people that raised their hand had thought about sound as they were looking at augmented reality. One other thing before I dive in, and that's that I work as I was introduced at the WXR fund. And what we do is we invest in companies that are transforming businesses and connecting humans using spatial computing and AI, so AR, VR, AI, particularly those that have gender diverse teams. So we look for female founders. We're going to open another accelerator in the fall. There have been 2 last year, 8 companies apiece. And if anyone's interested, or if you know companies that fit that particular intersection of AR, VR, AI, and female leadership, I would love to talk and be connected. So just wanted to mention that. All right, let's dive in. Rosario, thank you for the photo. It looks fantastic. So this quote was in an article last week from Andreas Sennheiser. Sennheiser, obviously, a maker of speakers. They've been around for decades. And it really resonated with me. It's, to me, picture is information and audio is emotion. So I'm not as drastic as Andreas is in thinking that picture and visuals are only information. I think visuals are beautiful. I love lights. I love pattern. I love color. I love all of those things. So I think that there's a beauty in visuals as well. But I do think that audio is critically important in an experience and can take us to different levels from an emotional perspective. So just wanted to stress that as we kick off. So then I wanted to also cover that sound and augmented reality, I kind of think of it in 2 buckets. One is how sound augments reality with visuals, and how sound can augment reality without visuals. And so we'll go into depth a little bit about that. First is the more obvious one. What most people think about is, how is sound interacting with this thing that I've created, this visual experience that I've created. But the other of sound without, instead of visuals, is something like you've seen with Bose frames. There are some capabilities with some Hearables and AirPods as well, but Bose frames have really picked up a lot of there's a lot more momentum around augmented audio, as it's sometimes called now, because of the Bose frames. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's first talk about sound augmenting visuals. And I'm going to cover, there are many, many ways that sound augments visuals, but I'm going to cover my favorite 4 and 4 that I think are really compelling into why you want to make sure that you've got a sound component to visuals. And again, we'll talk about why you may not want to as well, but these are the things that will help enhance the experience that you're making, depending on if you want to cover any of the increased immersion, more emotional connection, reducing some cognitive load, and actually giving direction with sound. Charlie Fink gave me some great advice earlier today. He said, just slow down when you talk. He's done this a million times. I feel like I'm rushing through the presentation. Okay. So first, let's talk about heightening immersion. This is some friends of mine experimenting with Magic Leap in the middle of a coffee shop in San Francisco. Sound with immersion, when we first consider AR, most people don't think about that AR can be immersive, right? AR, augmented reality, is a data layer on top of reality, right? It's giving information to what we're already seeing, or the field of view is really small. So how can it be immersive if you're looking through a phone or a 100-degree field of view? And I was one of those people that thought as well that you could not be immersed by augmented reality. And then I tried the Magic Leap, and I listened to Tonandi. So how many people has done that experience? So 25%. So absolutely do it, particularly if you're lovers of sound. And I'll tell you why. So what Tonandi is a musical-based experience that was built for Magic Leap by the band Sigur Rós, which is an Icelandic band. And it doesn't have any words, it's just music, but there are visuals of flora that grow on surfaces inside of whatever location you're at. So, and then you can interact with them with your hands, and different sounds will be made, and the music will shift. It's a beautiful experience, but unexpected to me is when I was done with the experience, which I think is 20 minutes long, I had forgotten that I was in my home. And this is in a mixed reality headset where I'm seeing my cat walk by, and I'm seeing the kitchen counter. But because of the sound, I feel like it was able to take me in that immersion scale of what normally augmented reality maybe would hit a 5 to an 8. So definitely this awareness of how you don't just need to be in virtual reality to be immersed, but that there is a component of augmented reality where you can hit higher levels of immersion, but where I believe that sound is crucially important there. So that is immersion. And then we'll talk about maximizing emotion, which actually applies to both augmented and virtual reality. George Lucas is famous for saying that 50% of sound, and actually even applicable to video, he has said that 50% of movies are based on our sound, right? 50% of the emotion of movies are based on sound. And if you think about, if you're watching a movie, or for that matter, in a virtual or augmented reality experience, and it was scary, you could turn off the sound and it wouldn't be scary anymore, right? But if you listen to the sound and maybe shut your eyes, it would still be scary, right? So just a reminder there, and this is for many different types of mediums, not just augmented and virtual reality, that sound is just a critical piece of connecting and getting emotion, connecting and increasing emotion with the viewer. Another experience, an augmented reality experience that I like that's related to this, is David Bowie Is. That's an AR experience created by a company called Planeta out of New York, and I think funded by Sony. But when David Bowie passed away, there was a great exhibit in Brooklyn, New York, of many pieces of his clothing and his costumes and his writing of the decades of experience and music and moments that he'd had as a musician. And that experience was, or the museum was sold out all the time. And then they extended it, and it continued to be sold out. At some point, it was a temporary exhibit, and they had to shut it down. But then there was this opportunity to create an augmented reality piece. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you check it out. I have to say it's probably the augmented reality piece I've frequented the most. And it's great because it brings all of these objects, these artifacts that you would see in a museum, but it brings them to you in AR. You use a mobile phone or an iPad. And the videos, I think there are 400 artifacts and 50-some videos, but a lovely narration as well, and beautiful, beautiful spatial audio clips from David Bowie. And so it's the audio really of that experience that makes me continue to go back, because it does hit some emotional chords. So just a reminder again, another reason to consider using audio as you're creating AR. So two other reasons that are somewhat similar is reducing cognitive load and providing direction. So I think I'm the 100th person at AWE to refer to hyperreality. Please, again, I'm gonna very interactive. Who has not heard of hyperreality by Matsuda? Okay, there's 6 of you. You need to see it. It's a quite a long video, and it's very, there's a lot of sound in it, but there are also a lot of visuals. I highly recommend checking it out. It's kind of the worst case scenario of what augmented reality could be. It so bombards the watcher with massive amounts of visuals, and the sound as well, right? There's actually way too much sound in it as well. It's literally what you don't want to build. And if a text window pops up, there's a beep, and something on the shelf that you're walking by makes sound. Like literally everything makes sound. So that's an example of overdoing cognitive load, both orally and visually. But there is a way to reduce cognitive load from a visual perspective with sound. Mark Billinghurst, who is a speaker here at AWE this week, has written about it as part of, he's a professor at University of Southern Australia, I think. But he talks about, in one of his white papers, reducing cognitive load. And what I mean by that is that if you have too much information in front of you, particularly reading, if you're reading something that's quite slow, and so a lot of times what you can do is offset some of that brain power that you're using, that cognitive load, and use sound in order to be able to balance that and make it a more friendly and more useful and more comfortable application. So some example of that is there's an art, it's used also quite often in museums. Instead of having to read the whole museum piece, imagine you would have to do that. It's augmented with sound, but also in places that aren't as obvious where you could put a lot of writing. There's a piece called, and I haven't seen it in a while, Art Labs, and that is over 1 million people in Europe have used it in exploring different historical sites. And so you're getting sound-based information and cues about where to go in historical sites versus signage, for example, because you wouldn't want to put that in, it's more disturbing in a castle, and you don't want to hold your phone up all the time. So some examples of that. There's also one at the Gatwick airport. I guess there's some 1,000 sensors or something that leverages an application that's sound-based that will guide you through the airport. So you can see, some of these things that are being explored where you can using sound to give direction and to reduce the amount that you're reading, because it can be a way that is much easier to process information. Bose. So if you haven't seen Michael Ludden's talk, if you didn't see it this week, he was nice enough to give me 3 points to let you all know what the big news is, but also definitely check that out when the videos come out. So they came out with a new headset. They have the current noise-canceling headphones that have AR technology, but also these Bose frames, so they're over-ear directional speaker-based sunglasses that also have a gyrometer, accelerometer, and compass point north, and then they interact with GPS on your phone as well. So the experiences can be created without actual visuals at all. You can just use sound in order to communicate with the user. So some of the applications that they've done have been Headspace. It's a meditation app. And so because the glasses, which I should have brought up here, if anyone wants to try them, I have some later, it knows if you're moving your head, so it'll have you do head rolls, and there'll be appropriate sound related to that. Another example of this is Traverse by Jessica Brillhart. So she has some great experiences, one being with Elvis, where you're walking in a space, and based on where you walk in a particular space, you will hear different parts of an Elvis Presley song, be it the instrumentals or his voice is soloed out, or the background singers, which is my favorite part. So their goal, Bose, is to have 1 million, I think, users by the end of the year, and they're actually also heavily supporting developers to develop applications using this technology. Fundamentally, I don't think that they'll be an eyewear company, right? The whole point is that they'll partner with other eyewear companies for this technology, but there is an SDK that's being used with other mobile apps to allow for sound-based augmented reality. And we don't have much time, but I want to cover Hearables as well. So Hearables is a market where it's transformed from hearing aids to a certain extent. So it's maximizing hearing and enabling hearing in a different sort of augmented way. So let's imagine that you are in a crowded location and there's a lot of noise around you, but you really want to hear the person across from you. You can't hear it really quickly. So Hearables are doing some things in that area where you can hear. You're targeting your hearing, you're enhancing your hearing in that way. Also, they have some biometric associations as well, EEG and heart rate monitors and things like that. So you can see how the technology is developing that they will become even more useful in terms of augmenting reality. And the other thing I wanted to remind you is that you can start to combine artificial intelligence with AR sound, and a lot of this will become more and more applicable as you think about, sound is also voice, right? And so natural language processing, computer vision, as you can start to see things with a mobile phone and then have that transfer into audio, and machine learning as you're starting to become more aware of the world around you. Using those technologies in association with sound will make it an even deeper and more compelling experience. Oh, so Timony West did a great talk yesterday on design. And so I'm not a designer and I'm not a creator, but she gave some great tips on how to think about audio, the places the audio would be best used, some advantages to using audio, and some challenges to using audio. So definitely, if you didn't catch that talk, and even if you did, get a reminder when the video comes out. And just to wrap up, I wrote the chapter for sound and AR from the book Convergence, How the World Will Be Painted with Data, that Charlie Fink pulled together. I'm very thankful to him when I reached out and said, when you're writing this book on augmented reality, have you thought about sound? And he said, no, we definitely need to think about sound. So grateful for that opportunity. You can read more about deeper applications of sound and AR in that book, but definitely another resource to go to learn about sound, which, by the way, was published in March, and it's out of date already, so he says it on the first page, but definitely some deeper examples of the use of sound and augmented reality in that book. So I just wanted to wrap up with that, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any on sound and augmented reality.